As we jump into our message today, my wife can vouch for this. I started a project at home where I decided I wanted to replace our floors. We had carpet, and when we bought the house, the carpet wasn't in all that good a shape. And so we put down vinyl plank all over the house, and I decided I want to do this project myself. I can learn how to do plank, right? I mean, I can do this. Anybody could do this, right? So I planned it, but as a part of that, of course, we're having to pull baseboards up and put new baseboards down and quarter round. And so I'll just admit that the project's gone a little slower than I thought it would, because I started it 5 years ago. and right? I'm not kidding. Okay. And the floors are in really good shape. If anyone wants to come help me with baseboards, that's great. But here's the thing, is like I wake up many weekends with great intentions. Like I wake up with the intent, today I'm gonna work on baseboards and quarter round. I'm gonna make these floors, shine like the Chrysler Building. I'm gonna make it look good. And somehow something always comes up. I mean, it's like, I don't know, maybe sometimes it's just like, man, I'm tired. I want a day off, so, and that Netflix show is just not gonna watch itself, and I do that, or sometimes I'd rather play with Millie and babysit, or I would rather do anything than that. You know what I mean, right? We say things like, well, my heart's just not in it. For all the days I've planned to get this project done, all of those days seem to have some kind of excuse, because my heart hadn't been. It was like I got it started, it was great, and my heart was in the right place to start with. Maybe I'll finish someday, but I'll keep you updated. But have you ever been that way? How many of you have like a project like that in your house? Something like, okay, good, I'm not alone. See, I'm not alone. Okay. Now listen, I'll admit when I'm not into something, but let's be honest, there are few harsher criticisms of someone than telling them they don't have any heart, right? When you think about it, we see it in sports. You're watching your favorite sports team play. I'm not gonna make a Purdue joke, I promise, okay? I am not. Tyler already took care of that today. So, but you're watching your favorite sports team and they're not playing well, they're playing sluggish, and what do you say? They don't have any heart, come on. What's going on? You felt that way before. We see it in other places in our lives as well. We see it, maybe somebody we're working with ends up wasting an entire day of work, scrolling through Facebook, or just not producing anything, and you look at it and say, man, your heart's not in it. And we've all seen that before. We've been there ourselves, haven't we? And that's why today I want us to kind of think about that. It's frustrating when you care about something and someone that's doing something for you, and their heart's not in it. You're depending on them to get the work done, but then you find that they're not moving fast enough, or they're cutting corners, it's done sloppily, or whatever. And that's frustrating when someone's heart's not in the work. They know how to do it. They've been trained. They're probably, you've probably hired someone who's a master craftsman in something, and it's frustrating when you come across someone that for whatever reason, their heart's not in it. They make silly mistakes. They don't return your phone calls or whatever it is. Here's the thing. They know what needs to be done. They have the skills, the know-how, and the talent, but their heart's not engaged for whatever reason. Sometimes the more talented team is gonna lose. Sometimes a skilled craftsman's work is not gonna reflect the work of a skilled craftsman. The trained employee is gonna let the rest of their team down. What's the difference? If you're filling in your outline, here's the first point, if you're filling in today, is your head, think about this. Your head is about what you know, while your heart is about what you believe. I just want you to think about that. Your head is about what you know, but your heart is about what you believe. You can know everything you need to know about something to be successful and to do it well. But if your heart doesn't truly care about it or believe in it, it's not going to turn out well. To do anything right, to do anything well, your head and your heart must be working together. I call that being heart strong. And today that's what I want you to have, that word, that phrase in your head, is living heart strong. And what does that look like? We started this series, Soul Strength, based on a book by Dr. Alan Hogrum. And this book, I think, just has some fantastic things in it. 12 chapters, rhythms he talks about that we can apply to our lives. You know, we've talked about this in the last few weeks. Talked about how discipleship, discipline, spiritual disciplines like prayer, Bible study, giving, serving, things like that. These are things that as we establish those rhythms in our life, we don't do those things as works to earn favor with God, to earn salvation. We do them to create space where God can come in our lives and transform us. That's what we say as a church, right? We are here to make disciples, growing disciples of Jesus Christ. We say that, and that's why we have life tracks and discipleship opportunities, is to create space where people can come in and have their lives transformed. That's what we want, and that's what these disciplines, that's what the rhythms of life that we're talking about that come from this book, and the things we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, is these rhythms that we can apply to our life to give room, space for God to work in us, to change us, to transform us. Last week we talked about the first rhythm is really embracing your story. And the fact is this, every single one of us in this room has a story. You do, you have a story. The question is, are you letting your story minister to make a difference, to help transform someone else? Embracing your story is where we have to start. If we want to be disciple makers, if we want to, as we follow Jesus, grow into people who are impacting other lives, because your story matters. I don't care how broken your story is, how full of messes your story is, how many times you've gotten off track. At the end of the day, God can redeem anyone's story, and he will redeem yours if you let him. He will redeem your story in such a way that it can be used to make a difference in someone's life, if you will let it. It's key, it's critical that we learn, not be a rhythm, that we learn to embrace our stories so that we can use them to help someone else in the journey they're on. But today we're going to talk about what it means to live heart strong as followers of Jesus. Let me ask you a question. Do you tend, in your daily life, as you go through work, parenting, sports, school, whatever it is you do you tend to base your life more on being led with head knowledge, or do you tend to lead more with your heart? What kind of person? I know we are all kinds. So here's what I want you to think about it is like the spectrum all across the stage. All right, from that wall to that one. Head knowledge. If you tend to be a more head up, neck up kind of person, I make my decisions based on knowledge, based on what I know. I want to gather the facts. I tend to be that kind of person versus the kind of person who's all emotion. It's all from the heart. It's the feeling. And you're an emotional kind of reactionary kind of person. Where on the scale, point to somewhere right now, where on the scale you're the kind of person you are, the kind of decisions you make. Are you more of a head person or a heart person? Hey, go ahead and point. Just point to where you are on the scale, anywhere in the middle or one side or the other. All right? I'll give you a chance to think about it. Okay? All right. You know, here's the thing. As I taught, just like with an athlete or a sports team or an employee or just trying to finish a project around the house, if we're going to follow Jesus, we have to learn that following Jesus isn't just about knowing things and knowing all about Jesus in our head. It's about truly believing the things about Jesus in the heart. Now, what you're going to hear me say today is not that we should be one extreme or the other, but our head knowledge and our heart have to be working together. That's what it is to be heart strong, is understand that I'm engaging my heart because I really believe in this. It's not just something I have to do, a box I check off. So that's what I want you to think about today. James chapter 1, verses 20 through 25 says this, "Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they are doing and what they do. And James is simply saying, you can know all the good stuff to do. You can know all the right answers from Scripture. The question is, do you really believe it? Have you engaged your heart? Have you taken this knowledge and put a heart behind it and said, I really believe this. I want to make this a part of my life. Guys, there are tons of people who know what the Bible says, but there are fewer who truly believe it with their heart, and it shows in their work, how they live out their faith. Guys, it's great to know what Jesus says about morality, about giving, serving, how to treat people. But the entirety of the Sermon on the Mount, found in Matthew chapters 5 through 7, is about not just knowing these things, but truly believing in them with your heart and living them out. Now, I want to be clear. I want to be clear about this. I'm not trying to say that just because you make a mistake, just because you have a day where your heart's not in it, and we've all been there, just because you have an area of weakness in your life that trips you up on occasion, that's not to say you're not heart strong. That's not the point. No one in this room has heart strength mastered. I certainly don't, and I thank God for his grace and mercy when I fall short. But as a follower of Jesus, I want to develop my heart strength day by day. I want heart strength to be a growing rhythm in my life. That's one way the Holy Spirit can begin transforming me into the person that God created and has called me to be. Now think about this. I want to illustrate heart strength today. And today I'm going to give you 4 things to think about what heart strength versus head strength looks like. Okay, what the difference is, how we compare the two. And I want to use the story. It's one you've probably heard many times. It's the story of David and Goliath from 1 Samuel chapter 17. Now, so I won't go into too much detail since most of you will know the story, but it starts with David's this young man. He's a teenager at this point, youngest in his family, but he's already been told, he's already been anointed by Samuel that he's going to eventually become the next king after King Saul, the next king of Israel. But he's not ready yet. And we don't even know when, at this point, we don't even know when it's going to happen. But he's still a young man. He's tending sheep. He's got 3 older brothers, and they're all fighting in the army for Israel. They're fighting a war against the Philistines. And so they're off at war, and David's still at home. He's too young to be fighting in the army, so he's at home tending the sheep and watching after the family. His dad says, David, I want you to go out to the battle lines. I want you to go find your brothers, take them some food, and find out how they're doing. Well, meanwhile, they're all there at the battle where the war's going on. And so as the battle, there's something that's happening every day. David doesn't know about it yet. But what's happening is the 2 armies have drawn up lines. And they come every day out to those lines. And instead of coming into the middle and fighting each other, this giant of a man named Goliath, he's a Philistine, he steps out into the middle. It says he's about 9 feet 9 inches tall. He probably can't dunk a basketball though, but that's another story. But he is about 9 feet 9 inches tall, and he's standing there, and he comes out every day at the top of his voice and he yells, is there anyone from Israel that will come out and fight me? If you send your best warrior out against me and he defeats me, then all the Philistine army, we will be subject to you. But if we beat you, then you'll be our subjects. And it says all the Israelites, all the men in this army would just tremble and hide every time he came out. It said he came out for 40 days in a row, in the morning and the evening, and made this challenge. So David is going out because his dad wants a report on what's going on, and he goes to the front lines, and as he's there, Goliath comes out to make his call, his challenge. Would anyone be willing to fight me? If any of your best man comes out and fights me, then you guys win. And David's hearing this. And he looks around and he sees all the Israelites trembling and hiding. And this is what David says in 1 Samuel 17, verse 26. David asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" Who is this guy? Well, some of the other guys start talking like, "Oh, well, that's real bold of you, David. We've been out here listening to this guy all the time, and you come out here with all your boldness. What are you going to do about it?" His brothers were not happy with him when they found out he was talking like this. So the word gets to King Saul that there's this young man talking like this. So they bring David to Saul. And David goes to Saul, and it says, David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." So David, this young man who's not even in the army, is saying, "I'll go fight Goliath. Give me a chance." This is God's people he's challenging. This is God's army. Who is he? And Saul says, "Well, okay, if you're going to go fight, put on my armor." And David puts on the armor. It's too big. It's too heavy. He's like, "I can't do this. I'm going to go. I'm going to fight this battle the way I need to fight it." And it says David says, just a few verses later, he says, "Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." And it says David walked out as Saul said to David, "Go, may the Lord be with you." David goes out with no armor. He has a slingshot. He picks up 5 smooth stones. And if you know the story, he walks out there. He takes one of the stones, puts it in a sling. As Goliath is laughing, "What are you coming at me like I'm some dog? Why are you sending this little kid? This is insulting." And this little kid takes a stone and the slingshot, and he just flings it at Goliath. It says it hit him in the forehead and sank in, and he fell down. And David went, and this is where it gets a little more graphic than what you get to hear in Sunday school sometimes, but David went and stood over him, cut his head off. So that's what happens when you defy the people of God. That was a pretty violent story. But I like to look at this story to see the heart of David. David wasn't perfect by any means, but he was definitely heart strong. Why? What's the difference? What was the difference in Goliath being out there yelling, "Come and fight me, come face me," and David taking a stone and going down there and doing it? What's the difference? What makes David heartstrong and not Goliath? Let's talk about that for a minute. You see, the difference between living headstrong and heartstrong starts here. Live with boldness, not bravado. If you're filling that in, go ahead and write that down. Live with boldness, not with bravado. Have you ever had to deal with someone who was just obnoxiously cocky? You ever had to deal with that person? Or deal with a team that was that way? There's 2 different kinds of cocky, the way I've seen it, especially like in sports and stuff, but even in life, is you have the one cocky person who is talking the big game, and you're looking at them going, "There's no way. They're just all talk." But there's another kind of cocky that someone who knows they're good, and you're looking at them and it's like, they might be really, really good. But all they care about is making themselves look good. And you wish somebody would just knock them down a peg or 2. I think about movies, right? And some of the greatest movies have that person. Think about like Johnny Lawrence from The Karate Kid. Remember him? The blonde-headed dude that stood up to Daniel-san. And, we wanted to not, you wanted to not, or in Rocky 3, Mr. T, Clubber Lang, he's like, "I pity the fool," and he's out there and you wanted to knock him down a peg or 2. Think about, I wrote down a couple of others. Harry and Marv in Home Alone. You want to do something about it. Jack Frost in the Santa Claus 3. These are things that get me stirred up, okay? Leave me alone. And I just look at this and I see these people and you're like, you want to knock them down a peg or 2. They have all this vibrato. But guys, there's a difference between vibrato and boldness. You can always recognize someone with bravado because they're convinced of their own greatness. They will say, I've got this. But someone with boldness doesn't need to be loud about it. They are convinced not of their own greatness, but of the greatness of God. They say, I don't got this, but God does. Goliath had bravado, but David had boldness. The Apostle Paul says it this way in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 9 and 10. But he said to me, and Paul was saying, I've got all these things in my life that give me reason to be proud, haughty. I'm a Jew. I'm a Pharisee. I grew up being trained. I have this knowledge. I have this experience. If anyone has reason to brag, it's me. And then Paul backs up a moment. He said, and that's why God gave me a thorn in my flesh. And I prayed for him to get rid of it. But this was what God said back to me. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That's why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. Paul says, for all the things I might brag about as a man, none of those are worth bragging about because I don't got this. I am weak. At the end of the day, I'm going to fail just like everyone else. I need the grace of God. And that's why I look at my weakness and say, I'm glad I'm weak because now I know I can depend on the strength of him. That's boldness. Someone who is headstrong has knowledge, they have talent, they have training, but they think they're great and they have all the answers and the abilities to do it on their own. But someone who is heart-strong has the same knowledge and training, but knows that greatness belongs to God and comes from him. And anything they do is because of God's strength in them. No matter what you do, learn to be a person of boldness, not bravado. Especially when it comes to living out your faith as a follower of Jesus. Be bold because you have the strength of God with you, but don't forget where that strength comes from. Let's talk about a second thing. We see this happening in David and Goliath's story, but understand that hard work is hard work. Think about that. You know what's hard about being a Christian? Coming to salvation is just the beginning. That's where you hear about Jesus and you decide that you're going to believe in it. That's just the first step of what it means to follow Jesus. John Flavel wrote it this way: the greatest difficulty in conversion is winning the heart to God, and after, to keep the heart with God. Heart work is hard work indeed. Paul writes in Philippians chapter 2, verses 12 and 13, therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to do the work, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Guys, heart work doesn't happen in isolation. It's more than just reading the Bible or listening to sermons. Heart work happens when we truly take time to examine our hearts, to allow God to work in our hearts, and when we allow God to speak through others to sharpen our hearts. That's why Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. I'll say this, the staff and I, we've started doing something, they kind of make light of it sometimes, but I think it's important. We meet together on Mondays. And we've starting off all of our staff meetings. We go around in the circle and we just check in. I ask everybody just to give one word that kind of describes how you're feeling today. And so we got some pretty creative words to try to describe our feelings. That's where we have fun with it. But we follow it after we say, whatever it is I'm feeling, I'm struggling, I'm excited, I'm motivated. But we follow it up by saying, but I'm all in. I'm all in. What that says is it says, I'm here today, no matter what baggage I brought, no matter what I'm feeling, what distractions I have, today, But right now, I'm all in. I'm giving my heart to this and what we're about to talk about, to ministry and what we're here to do. And it's just a symbol of drawing our minds together. And guys, we've got to do this together. You see, for heart work to happen, it helps. It's important to know that you have some people around with you who are all in, that you can help each other. That's what Life Tracks is all about. Life Track, asking and challenging you to get plugged in beyond just showing up for worship, to get plugged into a Discover class or a Connect group or a Core 4 group or Rooted, get plugged into a ministry team somewhere, to get involved in one of these Life Tracks, because you can't grow heart strong on your own. You need someone else to help sharpen you. We all do. And when we all come together and we know we're all in, we can make that happen. It gives space for God to work and for transformation to happen. The third thing I want to give you this morning is a healthy heart is a transparent heart. Now I'm going to ask you a really tough question. I want you to think about it for a second. Can you honestly say, I have no secrets, it is well with my soul? Do you want to answer that one? That's a hard one, isn't it? Let me ask it to you this way. Is there anyone in your life who has permission to ask you that question? Is there anyone that you have permission to ask that question of? Do you have people in your life that you can really be transparent with? Transparency is hard. It makes us vulnerable. It forces us to deal with some uncomfortable things. Our weaknesses, our temptations, our character flaws, sin. However, transparency allows for God to deal with these things in our heart. Transparency leads to transformation. A strong and healthy heart is a transparent heart. Imagine an environment with some people who have decided to take the same journey of following Jesus that you have. And sitting down, not for the sake of doing a Bible study, not for the sake of anything else other than just being able to come together and saying, I want to share my life with you. And I want you to share your life with me because we need to sharpen each other. Can you imagine what that would look like? It honestly sounds kind of scary for some of us, doesn't it? But guys, we need that. In our world today, we've become so accustomed to hiding everything that transparency is lost. Imagine a place, and I believe that's one of the things Life Tracks does for us, is you pick one of these tracks and you put yourself into a place where not immediately, but over time, you can be transparent. You can be sharpened by someone else. That's where heart strength comes from. And the last thing I want to give you is that soul strength begins with your heart. Soul strength begins with your heart. Jesus says, quoting Deuteronomy, an Old Testament law, quoting Deuteronomy 6:5, he says, someone asked him, what's the greatest commandment? And his answer was this: to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. Guys, the greatest command is to love God with our whole selves. And it starts with our heart. That was the first one listed, and I don't think that's an accident. Intellectual understanding, that's not really belief, it's just knowledge. Until you truly believe in it in your heart, and then it begins to take over your entire life. And when that happens, you will do whatever it takes to become heart strong. Guys, if you're not sure about the condition of your heart, find out. Right now, where would you rate your heart strength? Based on what I've shared with you this morning and the challenge I've laid down, if you were to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, the condition of your heart strength, what would you rate it? Of course, I don't want you to yell it out loud. I just want you to think about it. What is the condition of your heart? You can't possibly know if you never take the time to assess your heart. You can't strengthen your heart unless you're willing to allow the Holy Spirit of God to work on it. That's why we're here. That's why we're the church. And that's why we're a family. That's why Jesus gave us this church. Because we can't do it alone. We can't be strong on our own. And maybe today is the day that you're finally willing to step out of your bubble and to say, I need that. I need a place like that.